Good afternoon, everyone, and I'm very happy to present the governance aspect of URBANOME in on innovative policy learning and improving governance capacity in this session. My name is Jensen. I'm from Aarhus University. I have a background in political science, and I'm a work package leader on work package 7 on governance. Governance in the URBANOME paradigm is necessary to understand because the public institutions, the city councils and policymakers are the necessary partner and lead in co-creating and in sustaining behavioral changes towards the healthy, inclusive and climate resilient sustainable cities which we aim for and cities aim for. The cities, they face grand challenges: environmental health stressors, inclusiveness and equity, post-carbon, the transition to post-carbon cities that are massive at a scale, which requires that new policies and new options and new ways of governing society are needed. So the aim for us here is to identify and synthesize and also operationalize innovative policy analysis and approaches that can address these challenges for urban governance. So first of all, how do we see innovative policy making? It's a matter before we develop new approaches. We recognize how each city has its own history, its own culture, its own structures within a national framework for governing health and climate change and environmental topics in the city. And this we address as governing cultures that are path dependent and cultures we show to be path dependent for each city. And these governing cultures are embedded in an architecture for governing that the cities have. And this governing architecture is comprised of structure and process. Furthermore, cities face the challenges of divided policy areas and of troubles in thoroughly and from fundamentally working across these silos of policy making. And in our perspective, with the livable, healthy and inclusive city, this concerns especially the policy areas of health and of social equity and inclusiveness, of air quality, climate change, mitigation and adaptation, and urban well-being and livability. This is a challenge that that policy systems and governance has faced for decades, while this is while a number of different approaches to address it has been tested, while it's still a problem. So within this framework of governance architecture, we are able to analyze the ability to conduct and learn from and also take up novel approaches that are developing co-creation, experimentation. And this means that we can both have generic and generalized insight that inform this on the mechanisms of governing, while also addressing cities as specific and as unique in their own right, and tailor the policy approaches and the policy making approaches within the co-creation framework to target the specific city. So as we see here, the governing architecture has the culture and the systems. The systems are formal responsibilities and the relation to the state, for example, or in European networks. And the culture concerns the ways of doing things, the mindsets, but also transparency, accountability, and legitimacy. This entails also the sets of values and beliefs that prevail and govern behavior within the policy institution. So within this framework, we can see that policy learning is path dependent and within the governing institutions. The needs to enhance openness and shows and reveals a need for enhancing openness in the governing cultures. And it puts forward a question of legitimacy within the framework of co-creation in the urban living labs. On the one hand, this is the legitimacy is process-based and or process legitimacy. On the other, it's output legitimacy. And both are necessary to ensure the citizen engagement and support not only citizens but also other stakeholders. And their engagement is incremental to achieving the livable and healthy and inclusive and climate resilient city. So this leads us towards meta-governance, governing the governance, so to say, in close collaboration with the stakeholders and citizens. And then a very fundamental step here is learning, how policy institutions can learn with experimental policymaking and co-creative engagement in the urban living labs. The adaptive governance structures and procedures are needed to avoid a risk aversion, and we need to avoid risk aversion and accept that failures are a necessary and productive step in this. And in this context, policy entrepreneurs are the people active within the policy institutions, but also engaging with the outside to promote new approaches and promote the different policies within the framework. And this also means that we need to rethink the policy actors, both the public and the private policy actors and citizens in the city, and include these among policymakers. Also, with the policy analysis, we need to look at how we can achieve this. And policy analysis divulges barriers and enablers of city-specific path-dependent governing cultures. And with explorative and experimental workshops and interventions in the city and with the city policymakers and with the city, citizens and stakeholders in the city, in the urban living labs, we integrate the urban intervention in urban. We have the option, or can make a path for integrating the URBANOME intervention in the strategy of the city and identifying specific and crucial learning points to take forward. The first step of the intervention contains the potential for longer-term behavioral changes and where we want to go. And the second step in the workshop of the workshops focus on positioning and integrating the URBANOME intervention in the strategy. This is illustrated here as a participatory approach based on co-creation and involves both hard and soft interventions by the city through an experimental approach. Where the key thing is that it's an open exercise where thinking beyond the boxes is not only possible but also needed, and this is where we take departure. So in conclusion, we can say, in conclusion, then governance is necessary for inclusive, healthy, post-carbon cities in the URBANOME paradigm. Here we base it on innovative and adaptive governance that is needed to move towards healthy, inclusive, and post-carbon cities and behavioral changes. The governing architectures are incremental for understanding and reveals a path-dependent policymaking in the cities, and through using policy experimentation and institutional learning within the city and with the citizens and stakeholders, we embed the urban living lab interventions in the cities. Thank you very much for your attention, and any questions you have are very, very welcome.